A lot of attorneys these days, especially in the personal injury realm, we call them churn and burn, volume type practices where they will handle, a single person will handle over 600 cases. And it's very difficult to have hands-on attention or to have any type of detail eye on any case, let alone 600 cases. I think it's absolutely absurd. I think it's potentially malpractice in a lot of ways. But people just are not getting the attention that they deserve, and that's something that I've refused to give into. So we intentionally put limits on the number of cases that our attorneys and our paralegals here and staff can handle.
Hello and welcome to the Attorney Post, where we give you the inside scoop with top attorneys in their field. And now, here's our host, Justin West.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Attorney Post, where we discuss what's going on in various facets of the law with attorneys at the top of their game to help you navigate the various ins and outs of legal fields and jurisdictions. Because, as I always say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Today, I am very pleased to be joined by Nathaniel Preston. He goes by Nate, who is on the masthead over there, or the managing partner, as to say, over at Warnock MacKinlay. Nathan, how you doing, man?
I'm
Nathaniel.
doing great. How are you doing, Justin?
There's three versions. There's three versions, right? There's Nathaniel, which is the formal, that's your long, and then there's Nathan, which is like the abbreviated, and then there's Nate, which is like the abbreviated. So I'll probably call you Nate during the interview. So sorry if I biff your name. It's one of those days. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to join with me. We've actually, you and I have talked a few times. We've done a little bit of work on the side, in fact, together. And I keep meaning to have you on the podcast. I'm actually really excited. Today's the first day of fall for those of you who keeping track, although this podcast won't be live for probably about a week. But it's the first day of fall, and it's been a couple of months I've been trying to get Nathan on the podcast. So I'm really excited to have you on here. He runs, like I said, Warnock MacKinlay Law, which we're going to jump over right now and take a look at that website. Right there. Very easy to remember URL. It is youraccidentlawyer.com. So you guys should have a pretty easy time remembering that. And it's a personal injury law firm based out of Arizona, representing clients in accidents, injuries, and wrongful death cases. They work on a contingency basis, as most injury attorneys do, meaning there's no upfront costs. The clients pay nothing unless the firm recovers money on their behalf. And the firm emphasizes very strong client communication. They've got 4.9-star ratings on on Google, with something like 400, 500 reviews. So a very, very solid win for a lot of their clients. And in fact, they have achieved over $500 million in recoveries with a success rate above 99%. So if you're in the Arizona area and you need an injury law firm, I think Your Accident Lawyer should be potentially Your Accident Lawyers. That's youraccidentlawyer.com. You can also call them toll free or at least for a free consultation at 623-343-4340, which almost rolls off the tongue, not quite, but very, very close to that. That's 623-343-4340, or Your Accident Lawyer. And as always, we will have links to their law firm and everything else down below in the description of this video. So Nathaniel B. Preston, or Nate, serves as the managing partner over at youraccidentlawyer.com. He has been recognized for his unwavering dedication to clients facing personal injury and wrongful death challenges. Throughout his career, he has secured case outcomes between $1 million and $9 million plus, leveraging both strong negotiation skills and trial-level tenacity. He earned his bachelor's degree from Brigham Young University out there in Utah, and he went on to complete both a master's in real estate development and a law degree at Arizona State University with high academic distinction. Before founding or taking over Your Accident Lawyer, he gained experience in commercial real estate with major development firms and corporate law with an international law firm. He's licensed in Arizona and DC, and he combines legal prowess with compassion and hands-on client care and service. Now, that was kind of a mouthful to say, and I never feel like I get to the good parts anyway. So I guess my first question to you, Nate, as always, is what did I miss? Who are you really? Give me the 411, give me the scoop, give me the skinny on what makes Nate Nate.
I'm probably just a very boring guy to most people. No, but I have a wonderful wife, wonderful family. We love to travel. We've had the opportunity to visit all 7 continents.
Oh, wow.
And that means we've been to Antarctica, which was quite the experience. I'm a certified licensed drone pilot. And that's just because something that my wife really wanted as part of her business. But I've gotten out there and learned how to fly drones. So outside of the courtroom, that's where you're going to find me, is probably just going out and finding really cool shots with the drone, and trying to learn the camera a little bit better, and hopefully we can travel a little bit with the family. So
That's
yeah.
awesome. What does your wife do? That drone is she do real estate or something along those lines? Like I could see there being a couple of aspects. I looked into drone piloting for at one point, and land development, real estate, especially like large swaths of area, whatnot. But what does your wife do that you doing the drone piloting makes sense? I'm curious.
Sure. So she's actually a consultant for many luxury branded hotels throughout the world. And so they kind of hire her, and she does a lot of different things for them. She helps them improve their marketing campaigns. And, I'm out there trying to help her with some of the property photos and things like that on the real estate side. So anyway, she kind of drags me along on some of her crazy adventures, but you know what? It's been a lot of fun, and I wouldn't be the man I am or the lawyer I am, quite frankly, without her by my side. She's amazing.
Behind every good man is a better woman, right? Something along those lines. Now you've been to Antarctica too, and this is fascinating. I actually, story time for 30 seconds. I had a friend years ago who fell down the flat earth rabbit hole, and she's like, I can't get over this. I really think it could be the case. And I was like, all right, I'm willing to entertain because I have degrees in philosophy and history. So I can ask the deep questions in life, like paper, plastic, you want fries with that. But I could also ask the questions like, is the earth round? How do we know? And so I was willing to entertain the concept of, okay, how do I know the earth is round? And I was like, okay, I'm just dismiss everything I know and try to figure this out logically. And I came up with a series of tests for how you would know that the world isn't flat.
Sure.
And one of them, so the traditional flat Earth model is that there's an ice ring. So Antarctica isn't really Antarctica. Antarctica is like the ice wall that keeps everyone from falling off the edge or whatnot.
Right.
But one of my well, two of my theories came down to Antarctica. So if Antarctica is at the bottom of the Earth and it's an island, to circumnavigate it, you would always be turning more or less in towards Antarctica. Whereas if it's an ice wall, you'd always be turning away from Antarctica. So that's one of the ways you would tell. But the other one is on their general model, the sun. It's like in the northern in the I guess in the summer months it's closer to the northern hemisphere, and in the winter months it's closer to the southern hemisphere. The way of the tilt of the Earth is,
Sure.
excuse me. But on their model, there was no way if Antarctica, excuse me, if Antarctica was the ice wall, there was no way they could account for 24 hours of sun visibility. So I always said one of the ways I wanted to prove that the Earth was round was take a bunch of people down to Antarctica so we could watch the sun, 24 hours in the day. I figured that would have been an amazing thing. Now, when you went down there, was it that time of the year, or would you guys just go down there because you want to go down there? What led you down to Antarctica? Long story short, I'm curious about your trip to Antarctica.
No, we wanted to go down there to see the wildlife. That's what my wife really wanted to do. So that's kind of led us down there. So there's a cruise, actually, a cruise line that actually goes there now, through a group called Silver Seas. So we didn't go through the Drake Passage. A lot of people go through the Drake Passage, which is really rough. But no, there was still darkness down there. It was in the month of February.
Hmm,
So it probably had about 4 or 5 hours of where the sun wasn't shining, and the rest of the day was pretty much the sun. So
gotcha.
yeah.
Interesting. My third proof, incidentally, was the star trail. So up here in the northern hemisphere, the stars circle around one point. Well, if the whole world was flat and there's like a dome of stars, then as you get towards the edge, you would expect to see, sideways moving stars, or you would not expect to see what you see. And I said, if there's an equator, you would expect to see that as you get to the equator, the stars really just go almost over heaven. And as you go to the south, you'd be able to see them spinning around the Southern Cross or whatever it is. And sure enough, obviously, that's what we see. So I am not here pushing flat Earth by any means, but Antarctica was a big part of me trying to reason out how I would ever establish what would be a simple visual proof. Like, I mean, there's Eratosthenes measuring the angle of the sun in a well and things like that the ancient Greeks had solved 2,500 years ago. But for the average person, especially nowadays, like geometrical knowledge is kind of lost. But here's a simple observational thing that I feel like would be a kind of a make or break issue. In fact, I'm told, and I'm sorry, this is, podcast or podcast, so sometimes we just tell stories. I'm told there was actually about a year or so ago a group of flat earthers who did exactly this. This was like 7 or 8 years ago that I was pushing this idea. So somebody took my idea and ran with it, but they took a bunch of flat earth people down to Antarctica. They saw the sun, and a couple of them they I don't know if the word recant or repent or they gave up their flat earthism or whatnot. Like, all right, it's a ball. I get it, I get it. So anyway, I just always found I've always wanted to go to Antarctica. I find it absolutely fascinating. So the fact that you've been there is really cool. Let's jump back and talk about you though. You run a law firm, Warnock McKinlay, and it's got a great, again, very clever URL. Your Accident Lawyer. I know a fair amount about your firm. I've done some research. We've done some work together. But let's assume for a minute I don't know who you are. Give me a pitch for your firm, Nate. What sets your firm apart? Who do you help? Where do they come from? Why did they choose to work with you?
Yeah, definitely. It's a really good question, especially because there's a lot of personal injury firms out there. I mean, at least here in Arizona, it seems like every billboard, every bus stop, every bus, everything you see, there's an advertisement for a different personal injury lawyer. And I sympathize quite a bit with the injured person who's trying to choose a good attorney because it's a daunting process because everybody says they're the best. Everybody says they have all these awards. Everybody says this, that, and the other. And, amongst attorneys, I think we do have a pretty good idea of who's good, who's not. And, it's kind of proof in the pudding. And I would say, people really should do their research when they're looking for a personal injury attorney and not just go with the first person that picks up the phone. They really should look at their reviews, their case results. They should look at testimonials. They should look at, what type of work ethic do these attorneys actually have? A lot of attorneys these days, especially in the personal injury realm, we call them churn and burn, volume type practices where they will handle, a single person will handle over 600 cases. And it's very difficult to have hands-on attention or to have any type of detail eye on any case, let alone 600 cases. I think it's absolutely absurd. I think it's potentially malpractice in a lot of ways. But people just are not getting the attention that they deserve. And that's something that I've refused to give into. So we intentionally put limits on the number of cases that our attorneys and our paralegals here and staff can handle. And quite frankly, it's well below 600. It's more like 150 to 200 cases and they have a whole team behind them of paralegals and legal assistants. So I would say that's the number one thing is we have really an eye for detail. We want to make sure that there's no stone unturned. We have investigators. A lot of firms these days have not chosen to go the investigation route. If they get a police report that's unfavorable to them, they'll just simply drop the case. It's not worth their time, their effort, their money. Whereas if we're going to invest in your case, we have an investigator on staff that will actually go out, get witness statements. They will go to the intersection. They will look at different parts or scenes of the accident, just so that we can try to prove that the other person who caused the injury is at fault. And we put together, a nice little investigation packet for the insurance company so that we can get them to pay up and pay some money. I mean, that's the first thing that we have to prove is who's at fault. Again, a lot of firms don't take those steps. They don't think it's worth their time or money. They just want the easy money coming in where police reports are favorable and they're just kind of collecting a few bills and records here and there and then submitting a demand to the insurance company and then hopefully getting a check. And even then they're not litigating cases even on value. And that's a third thing that I think I would say is, we're a litigation firm, we're trial lawyers at the end of the day, and insurance companies know that. They know us, they know our reputation, they take us seriously. And a lot of firms don't have that reputation, unfortunately, and it proves out in the settlements that they're able to get without filing a lawsuit. Our values are historically much higher on what we call pre-litigation cases because we litigate cases and we win. So insurance companies don't like losing. They hate the risk factor of going to trial and a jury awarding a big verdict against them. And we've had those cases. We've had cases where we've won. And oftentimes we'll even appeal cases to the appellate court. And again, they hate that. So again, insurance companies know who we are. They take us seriously. And if we demand a certain amount, they're going to really look at that amount. And if we're not able to resolve it, then we will file a lawsuit and we have the experience to go to court.
That's awesome. And the thought that pops into my head when you say that is my sons. Well, one of them's now in college, but my other son is a junior in high school, and they're on the soccer team. And there's just certain soccer plans, certain soccer teams like, oh, I don't want to play this team. I don't want to play this team. Like they're known for being good. Like we're like a little tiny 2A, and they played like a 6A school the other day. Or I don't even know all the divisions, but they know like this one is going to be competition. We're going to have a rough time with this one. There's no way around it. And I think it's the same way in the legal space. You know, you are dealing with insurance companies, and they have a fiduciary responsibility to pay out as little as possible. Let's be real about this. You know, they wouldn't be in business if they're always like, oh, just throw out all the money we can at every single case. So I mean, they have a responsibility to not throw out money willy-nilly, but they also have responsibility to make sure they're taking care of the people that are in fact insured. And you guys are kind of the middle ground there that makes sure that the people that are injured actually are taken care of. You also said some of these places have 600 cases per attorney, and I was just briefly doing the math in my head. There's 365 days in a year. Let's assume you work 6 days a week. That's about 300 work days out of the year. So that would mean max you'd have about 4 hours of time per year per case. And
Yeah.
that just strikes me as absolutely ridiculous. So I think you're 100% hitting the nail on the head when you tell me just how important it is that you guys can give that dedicated case, and you limit yourselves, and you know we need to have this much time for these sorts of cases. What's the longest you've worked on any particular case?
Um, 6 years is probably the longest I've had to work on a case. I mean, I don't necessarily take pride in that just because clients want, their cases resolved as quickly as possible. And I feel bad when clients have to wait that long. But at the same time, we're not willing to recommend a settlement or a resolution without actually turning over every stone and making sure we're giving the proper recommendation. And in that case, I mean, it really was the insurance company who dragged it on. They just were never willing to make an offer on that one. It was an interesting case. It involved Uber and rideshare.
Hmm.
And basically, the argument that we were trying to make was that they were what we call vicariously liable for their drivers' actions. And a lot of people may or may not know this, but drivers for rideshare companies are generally depicted as independent contractors. So if you have an employer-employee status versus an independent contractor status, it does change the equation in terms of who's responsible to pay for an injury if that driver causes an accident. So we were fighting that through many different layers of many different courts and things like that. And it was a really tough. And at the same time, the rideshare companies were passing laws in different jurisdictions and states and going through to the people, taking it to a vote as to whether or not these drivers should have employee benefits or not. So anyway, that's kind of what happened in that case. And yeah, we like to get cases resolved much quicker. In Arizona, the statute of limitations to file a lawsuit is 2 years. Most cases, though, are generally resolved within the first year. I mean, they really are. Just because we're able to get the investigation done, where the client's usually done treating, getting their medical treatment resolved, and we have a better understanding of what their injuries really are. A lot of law firms will just say, let's just get a demand out before they're even done treating and even having an understanding of what's actually wrong with them. I mean, I have many clients coming to me who say, what if I have a problem, 3 years from now? Like who's going to pay for this?
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that they are compensated for that, and that's what we're looking for. So clients definitely need to get the proper treatment and those types of things so that we can have a general understanding of their past and future treatment.
How do you argue for that? I was just kind of jumping ahead a little bit because this is more of the the soup, the meat and potatoes of the whole conversation here. But how do you argue for that in court? How do you make that argument before a jury that, hey, these people may have issues in 3 years that we don't even aware of right now or haven't been diagnosed, and how do you make that a winning argument? Because I feel like if I was sitting on a jury, I'd be afraid of somebody just painting a whole bunch of pictures of like, oh, there's a whole bunch of possibilities. And obviously you want to side with the injured person, but you don't want to be unreasonable. At least many people don't. How do you make that argument?
That's a really good question. I think that's why it's so important for somebody to hire a good attorney who's actually going to communicate with the client along the way from day one. because treatment is really important. Now, we're not doctors. I'm not a doctor. I'm not somebody who's diagnosing or anything like that. However, we do have an understanding of how treatment is going to impact your case and the value of your case for better or for worse. Insurance companies, as you said, they're always looking for ways to be able to pay the least amount of money possible. And treatment is one of those things. So we call it gaps in treatment. If somebody's going to a doctor and then they think, oh, I'm just going to get better. I don't need to go get any more treatment. I don't need to do this, that, the other, even though the doctor is still recommending some course of treatment. If they take it upon themselves not to go to treatment, that's a gap in treatment. And insurance companies will argue in front of a jury, well, they didn't get treatment, so therefore they are not injured. Okay, so that's the first thing is clients really need to be in keeping us as their attorneys in the loop, and we need to make sure that we're being proactive in that communication as well with the client. Hey, don't have any gaps in treatment. Follow the direction of your doctor and go get the treatment. Now, doctors are trained to start from conservative measures to more aggressive measures depending on the injury. If you're not getting better, so a lot of times people will start, hey, let's go see my primary care physician, and then they'll do maybe a course of physical therapy or something like that. Let's just say this is a run-of-the-mill car accident case or something like that. They'll start with that, and then after 3 months of physical therapy, if they're not getting any better, a lot of times the doctors will then order an MRI, to get some sort of objective evidence, to be able to kind of say, okay, you have a torn labrum, or you have a torn ACL, or you have this. So now they have a better understanding of the next course of treatment. So it becomes a little bit more aggressive. And then they recommend either a surgical opinion or maybe even a more aggressive from the conservative physical therapy so that they can reach what we call maximum medical improvement. So it's really up to the client in the beginning to go through each stage of recommendation of treatment so that we can fight, if this is the perfect case in front of a jury, any argument that the insurance company would have. Because you don't want to just jump to surgery, because then the insurance company is going to argue, well, how do we know they even needed surgery? They're going to question the doctor, his motives, and things like that. That sometimes lawyers get involved and they're recommending that clients go to their preferred physician or something like that. So they start making crazy arguments like that in court. But really, if you just handle it in a reasonable way to where it's, okay, let's start with just the basic stuff. And if you're not getting better, then you go back to your doctor, you get a recommendation, you follow that recommendation. If you're still not getting better, you need surgery. Okay, great, go get surgery. And if that's what's being recommended and you feel comfortable with that, and then after surgery, there's going to be even more course of treatment. And then you take that through all the way until they can't get any more treatment. And if they're still in pain after they've exhausted all of those treatment options, then you get an expert, and the expert will then be able to testify based on what's called an independent medical evaluation and all the records and everything that they've done to that point. And based on those injuries and their life expectancy, they can then give you some sort of future estimate. That's a very long-winded answer, but that's basically what happens.
Well, I mean, you got to cover all the bases, right? I mean, that really is, this is how you argue it. You got to document it, you got to catalog it, you got to make the argument from what you have. And if you don't have it, you don't have it. So I
Yeah.
think that makes perfect sense. Let's talk a little bit more about you in particular, though. You obviously, you've got your a bachelor's of science, I believe, human development or something like that, if I recall.
Yes.
So it seems to be something you're interested early on. How, what got you into law? Did you always know ultimately that law was kind of your end goal? Were you the kid that like grew up watching Perry Mason reruns, or did you kind of stumble into law as like, oh, I think I actually have a knack for this? And then from law in general, what got you into PI?
It's a long story, man. So hopefully we don't bore all your listeners. But basically, as you mentioned, I majored in human development. I actually thought that I would become a marriage counselor of all things at some point. Um, my mom actually encouraged me to go that route. She thought that would be a really good career for me. I don't know why. Maybe because I was a pretty good listener as a child, or I don't know. I had a knack for certain advice, I guess you could say, with relationships and those types of things. So I um I kind of studied that, And then when I came out of college, real estate was really a big thing, and I decided just to kind of dip my toe in that, and that's what got me involved in commercial real estate. I didn't really have law on my radar at any time during that time period. I was more interested in trying to make a career in business and entrepreneurship and those types of things, and that's why I went into real estate. But then the market took a big crash in '08 when I first came out, and it was very difficult to get any traction. So I had already felt like I needed to go back to school and kind of get smarter, improve myself, improve my credentials. So I went into this Master's of Real Estate Development degree. And as part of that curriculum, there was a law professor from Arizona State University, and he was a practitioner. He was a managing partner of a pretty well-known law firm in Arizona. His name's Gary Birnbaum. He was just the smartest guy, just so smart. He had a photographic memory. He could recall cases. He just had this way of speaking. He just was so polished in every which way. It was just really impressive. And I just constantly was picking his brain. And he said, you know, Nate, if you really want to improve yourself, and if you really want to be successful, I highly recommend a law degree. So that was one of the first times that I really seriously thought about it. Another big part was when I was dating my wife, which was about a year before. Her family comes from all lawyers. I mean, her dad's a lawyer. Her older brothers are lawyers. It seems like everybody in their family is a lawyer. And she said the same thing to me. She said, you know, you can go get an MBA, and nothing against anybody who gets an MBA. MBAs are great. But she said, you know, MBAs are a dime a dozen. A law degree can do a lot of good things for you. And, you know, it's really worked out for my dad, her dad, in business, and he's been a really good, successful real estate developer. And that's kind of what I was in at the time. And so that also got me thinking about it. So between those two, those were major influences. And while I was getting my master's, I said, what the heck, I'll just take the LSAT. So I studied and took the LSAT, and was able to score enough to submit applications. So I submitted applications, and we went to law school, and from there, and I thought I was going to stay in real estate the whole time. Come to find out, the legal aspect of real estate was not that interesting to me. It's a lot of contracts, just kind of, for me, it was a little bit boring, and, you know, just kind of negotiating contractual terms, and I didn't feel like I was really doing something really good or helpful for people. I just felt like it was just kind of bland for me. And I did a few internships with some very impressive law firms and organizations, real estate development companies, and things like that. And then I had about 6 weeks. I had about 3 weeks after my internship ended between my second and third year of law school. And it was this firm called Warnock MacKinlay and Carmen at the time. And so I said, what the heck? You know, I'm always looking for experience. Everybody wants to add more to their resume and kind of, you know, dip their toe in different things. So it was a personal injury firm. And it was obviously what this firm is now. But I went in and I started on these cases, and for whatever reason, it fit me like a glove. I was able to help people. I was able to give them advice. It seemed like I was making an impact. Here, somebody was injured, and hopefully only injured for the first time or last time in their life, and going through something very stressful, something very traumatic, and they were looking to really get the help that they needed. And I just gravitated to it. And they thought I did a good job. They offered me a job out of law school. So I continued working with them my third year of law school, took the bar, passed it, and then came here, and I did really well my first couple of years. And the managing partner at the time, Warnock, he needed to retire. He wanted to retire, and he was looking for somebody to be able to kind of succeed him. And because I was able to do so well, He offered if I wanted to basically take over and purchase the firm. And so I had that opportunity in 2015 to do that only 2 or 3 years after law school. And it just, since then, we've taken the firm and we've grown it, we've scaled it even more. But I've always tried to live true to the principles that I was taught. And that's, um, your client, each client, you need to treat them like your only client. And I
Hmm.
think that's the mantra that we've really tried hard to live by. And sometimes we make mistakes and fail just like anybody else. We're human beings, but we work really hard for these folks, and we try really, really, really hard to make sure that they're known and they're noticed, they're updated. We communicate with them, we fight for them, we do everything we can to help these people because we know that they're the lifeblood of our business, number one, but number two, they've gone through something traumatic. I mean, there's a lot of empathy for them.
Yeah, 100%. Just out of curiosity, and I don't know if I'm allowed to ask this question or not, but are we ever going to see Preston on the masthead, or is that just something you're not really interested in because of the brand recognition? Or I'm just curious.
I've a lot of people ask me that question, quite frankly, and a lot of people love to have their name on the door, and they just do, and I'm just not that guy. I'm really not that guy. I don't care about the name, for my name to be on the door. I would rather almost just keep the name because insurance companies know Warnock,
Yeah,
and they've known Warnock. It's been in existence for over 25 years. And I don't think by me putting my name on the door would help anything at this point. I think we just keep building the brand as it is. It's kind of like
that's
somebody going in and changing, not to this same extent. I'm not saying we have this brand recognition, but like somebody went in and changed Morgan Stanley that's been in existence for all of these years. That might be kind of strange just because somebody wanted to have their name on the door. On a
yeah.
very small scale, I kind of feel the same way.
I think that's a fair way to put it. Well, it's good to know. And again, it tells me you're interested in doing it because you love doing it and you love making the difference. You're not in it to make a name for yourself. You're in it to make a difference for your clients. And I think that's huge. That really speaks well of you, which is nice. You said a minute ago, every so often you do fail. And that leads me into my next series of questions. Really, I'm a firm believer that, you step up to plate, you go to bat enough times, nobody bats 1,000, right? And that's okay. That's just a part of human life. But I'm also a firm believer that a fail is not really a fail as long as you learn from it. So, can you tell me about maybe a time in your practice of law, Nate, that you experienced a failure? It could be anything from a case you guys thought you were going to win and totally got decided the other way. It could be you forgot to fill out the paperwork the right way, or a witness came in and said the wrong thing, or whatever it is. But what's a time in your experience of law where you experienced a failure, but what did you learn from it, and how do you carry that forward to always make sure you're giving the best care to your clients?
Yeah, sure. I think the biggest things that I make sure of as a manager and managing partner, when, as I mentioned, when I took over this firm, I was only 3 years out of law school. Now, I've been doing this for 15 years, so it's a lot longer, more experience, more time to understand things, more situations to be confronted with. But when I first kind of took over as managing partner, that man, it was drinking from a fire hose. It was tough. I mean, all of a sudden I'm managing a firm of employees, other attorneys. Everybody's looking to me to kind of be this decision maker for them, to help them on the cases, to have some wisdom. But all in the same time, I was still learning a lot myself. I still am learning. I mean, I don't think there's a day that goes by that I'm still not learning something. And that's what's beautiful about the practice of law, quite frankly, and even being a business owner is you never fail to learn something every single day. But I would say, in the early days, especially as a manager, is I didn't necessarily know the type of culture. I knew the culture I wanted to hire, but I didn't necessarily understand how to identify the proper people to always match that culture to bring forth the maximum success. And, a company is only as good as the people that you have in it. It really is. I might be a leader, I might be a manager, and maybe people will be excited about hiring Nate, right? But at the same time, Nate is being represented by a lot of people within the firm. And it's I made a few mistakes early on in terms of the people I hired, people I chose. And I thought they, had different characteristics or different, and my interviewing style was probably a little bit more nonchalant, more relaxed in the beginning because I kind of grew up a little bit as a people pleaser, and I didn't necessarily know how to lead yet, and um, it disrupted our culture, it disrupted cases, it caused some frustration amongst clients, and it definitely made an impact. And ever since then, I have vowed, doesn't matter how good somebody is necessarily on the professional level in terms of resolving cases, if they are a toxic person,
Mm.
they are causing a toxic culture, I will not have them as part of my culture. And I have had some very good paralegals and very good attorneys in my office who were excellent at doing their job, but they were toxic people, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And they were toxic to the culture. And I made the mistake of letting those people stay longer because they were good at their job, even if it was at the detriment of other things that were making a huge impact. And I've really learned from that. I just don't do that anymore. I have
Gotcha.
decided to be true to the culture that we have built, even if we don't have, and trust me, things get better because you learn from that, and you can have both. You can have very good qualified people who are not toxic people and who do a great job. And that's what I've learned.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely 100%. I agree with that completely. And I've known those people. I've known very diligent but toxic people, and I've known very diligent and pleasant people to work with. And of course, there's inept, pleasant people too. But
Sure.
you got to find that. You got to find that balance. And I mean, everyone has a little bit of a toxicity in them, probably. But on a scale of 1 to 10, many people sit at like the one or the two. Whereas I've known people that are clearly a 7+ on the toxicity scale. I'm like, this is just not going to work out. And I
Right.
get it 100%. Well, the flip side of that question, though, is I'm sure that you've had some great successes. And they're not all cases, maybe. Although I'm sure just you have to feel proud running a firm. 3 years in, I suspect you had that. What's the imposter syndrome or whatnot? Well, all of a sudden you're running a firm, your name's not on the masthead, but you're you're the managing partner, you're the chief cook and bottle washer. You had to have moments of like panic, like, oh gosh, is this really me? Does the buck really stop here? But at the same time, as you kind of fell into it more naturally, as you got better, there had to be moments where you just were proud there. So can you tell me about a time or two in your practice of law, whether cases, whether not, where you're just really proud of the success that you've been able to encounter? And again, it can be a case that you thought was going to go against you or against your client, and then everything pulled out in the end or whatnot. But what are some of the moments in your legal career, Nate, that make you most proud?
I mean, gosh, I think we've taken this firm, and I say we because it's not just me, right? Like there are so many people responsible for the success of this firm, and I've just been lucky to. I mean, I've talked about maybe some people that weren't that great, but boy, there have been so many wonderful people
Hmm.
that have been part of this firm and still are part of this firm that I just love having around here in this place. And I owe all the success of the firm to these wonderful people. But we've grown this firm where we were getting, like when I took over, maybe 10 cases a month, something like that, to where we're over 100 cases a month now. And we've been able to scale it in such a way to where we've been able to maintain those standards that I talked about earlier, where, every client is treated like they are the only client. I'm not interested in becoming the biggest firm in town. I want to become the most quality and most well-known, and the attorney that's going to really fight for your client, and really do a good job for them and help people. I want to provide value to them in their lives. I mean, yes, we're a business. We have to be profitable. We have to do all of those different things. But that just comes naturally if you're doing things the right way. But yeah, I'm proud of the way we've grown it, how we've grown it, and not necessarily losing sight of what's important, and not selling, I guess, our soul, to just profits. I mean, we want to maintain people over profits, for sure. And then a few cases, there's been a couple of different cases where that just really stand out. One case in particular, a lady was hit by a semi truck off on the side of the road, and
Ooh.
very, very seriously injured. And the insurance company, again, they, right or wrong, they fight tooth and nail. They don't want to write big checks, and they get really upset when they have to. But we fought this case tooth and nail, and we were able to get her over $5 million. And a lot of times we structure things. What I mean by that is when somebody has received a massive settlement or a verdict, then we can work with financial companies or annuities to be able to help these people invest it tax-free, so that any capital gains are not paid as tax, so that you can invest the settlement into something. We call that a structured settlement. And they can basically then get a lifelong monthly payment for X number of dollars. They can get lump sum payments. There's all sorts of different ways to creatively structure it. But this lady could have gotten, quite a bit of money on a monthly basis with that type of a settlement, that basically she would never have to work the rest of her life. And quite frankly, she couldn't really work because she was that injured.
Yeah.
And we just wanted to make sure that the financial controls were there for her, and she wanted that as well. Because oftentimes what happens too is when it's the unfortunate side of things, that when somebody gets a big settlement, you have family members come in, you have, anytime there's large sums of money involved, you have sometimes bad actors that come in and try to take advantage of these people, and they're already vulnerable. So we try to present these options to them so that they can help avoid that. But the insurance company, they have to be involved in that decision, and they were so mad. They were so mad with the outcome of this case that we won so bad that they said, no, we will not allow her to earn another dime off of our back. And just completely strange and absolutely absurd that they would treat this woman that way just because they lost a case. And but we were able to overcome all of that. And I'm just proud of those moments because you have very vulnerable people. You have very vulnerable people, very injured people, and they're going to be injured for the rest of their lives. And just the ability for us to be able to step into their shoes and represent them and to give them a voice, to get them the money that they really deserve is huge. I mean, and that's what we do it for. I mean, it's great, because we can really help these people out.
Hmm. I never really thought about setting up a structured settlement. Obviously, was it J.G. Wentworth or whatever? There's the whole song that plays. I have a structured settlement and I need cash. I never really thought of that as something that you guys help to set up in order to make sure that the person is going to be benefited long term. Because you hear, and I've heard that these statistics aren't entirely true, but they say that statistically something like 50 to 70% of lottery winners, like major $1 million winners, go bankrupt in X number of years or whatever. I've heard similar stories of NFL players who make lots and lots and lots of money, but as soon as they stop playing, they're broke within a couple of years because they never learned how to manage their finances. It's fascinating to hear that you guys actually do help them set those sorts of things up so that they're taken care of long term. And it's almost like putting the money away in a trust or whatever, so that it prevents family members from coming around and like, oh, hey, by the way, we really need to buy grandma's second house, and or
Right.
whatever it happens to be. So is that a pretty normal part of helping them with the winnings, or does it really just vary on a case by case basis?
It does vary on a case by case basis because, I mean, depending on how much money they're getting, it has to make sense still.
Hmm.
But at the same time, like for example, like if a minor is injured, a lot of times those have to be court approved. They go into what's called a conservatorship, where a judge actually has to approve the settlement. And so if you have a young person who's only, let's say, 7 or 8 years old, they're not going to be able to access that money until they're 18 anyway. So why not put it into something that can actually grow and make the most sense for them financially, rather than putting it, the other option is putting that into what's called a restricted account, And depending on the restricted account, you're only getting maybe a point or less of interest, annual interest on, so you're not really doing much with that money. So, I mean, maybe it's better these days just because interest rates have gone up since a few years back, but it's still not great in comparison to an annuity. You can really grow it. You can really get some benefit and bang for your buck. The other issue is the tax benefit. You know, many personal injury, if it's a true personal injury settlement, it's excluded from paying any type of income tax. And so I had a case, this is a perfect scenario of what we're kind of talking about to kind of bring it home. I had a case just this year. We settled for a large sum. Again, this one was over $5 million. And it was an older gentleman who wanted to retire. He's a little bit more sophisticated, meaning he had experience with investments and those types of things. It's not like he didn't know what he was doing, but he had a financial advisor in his ear giving him all sorts of different advice, which is good. It's great. He has a financial advisor. However, it became very clear that the financial advisor didn't quite understand everything. The reason why is because if you put it into a structured settlement like this, if you do it at the outset, before the money changes hands, so before the client gets any money, it's invested straight from the insurance proceeds. They're the ones kind of, you're working with them and their brokers to be able to deposit the money into the annuity. Then you avoid capital gains as well. Okay. So you avoid the income, plus you don't have to pay any tax on the gains that it's earning. Well, he wanted to just take the money, get the money, deposit it in his account, give it to his financial advisor, and then they kind of manage it from there. And he wanted the same benefits. Well, that's not how it works. You don't get tax benefits if that's how you do it. You have to do it a very specific way. Well, his financial advisor was the one advising him of that because financial advisors make money on managing money, right? And I have nothing against that. That's great. But this particular person had a personal motive to be able to manage, $5 million or so,
Yeah.
so that he could get the percentage on that rather than doing what was right for his client. And, that's what we try to look out for, those types of things. It's not just family members. There's all sorts of people that want access to your money. And who knows if they're going to do a good job, bad job, whatever. But the tax benefit in that case was, why would you do that? Like, why even worry about it? And anyway, we ultimately were able to show him all the options. He made a good choice for himself, but still, we try to protect everybody every step of the way. We're not money managers, but we want to give good advice.
Yeah. That's fascinating. And again, I guess, I work with a lot of injury attorneys. I've worked with a lot of people over the years, and this is one aspect I've never really considered before is what do they do with the big settlements when they get them and whatnot, which is just kind of fascinating. So, like you said, I like to learn every single day, and I feel like I can check that box now. I learned something good, which is nice. I always like to be able to leave my day and be slightly smarter, slightly better off than I was before, which is fascinating. Let me ask you one more kind of tangentially related question to all of this. And this is one of my favorite questions to ask people in general, because again, it just makes for good podcast fodder. I'm sure you've encountered some absurdities, and it could be, the insurance company didn't want to pay out a dime and didn't want to help with the structured settlement or whatever. But what's one or two of the most absurd things you've encountered in your practice of law, Nate?
Well, one's client related, and you know, we'll facilitate when a client calls us to do a consultation about their case. We'll facilitate any method of communication that is possible. If they need us to come meet with them, we'll go meet with them. If they want to do it over the phone, we'll do it over the phone. If they want to do it Zoom, we'll do it Zoom. We'll facilitate as many different methods as we possibly can to help them understand if they have a case. And this particular time, I was very young. Is before I took over the practice, and I went out to meet with this lady who was interested in signing us up. It was in a place I had never been before in Arizona. So anyway, I find this place and I knock on the door and I hear this, "Come in." And so I go in, and it was just this lady, just completely naked. And I was like, I gotta get out of here. So I go out, I'm like, I don't think I can handle this one right now. So maybe we could schedule another time. So that was kind of, I guess, chalk it up to very unusual, absurd.
Was she a nudist or?
I don't know. I didn't really have those, I didn't ask those questions, but
The AC wasn't working that day?
yeah, I mean, it's not the type of person you would expect either to kind of just be in the nude, but it is what it is.
That's fair. You said that that was the client related one. Was that the client related one, or was there a different one?
That's the client related one, and I ended up getting a lady from the office to be able to come and take things over so that I didn't have to obviously put myself in kind of an awkward situation. But
Well, and
like,
in this day and age, that also puts you in kind of a
yeah,
dangerous legal predicament, right? I mean,
exactly.
it does raise questions. So, I mean, yeah, it's a funny situation to find yourself in, but you got to be careful in those situations because people could definitely take advantage of you. And so, I guess that's yeah, that's crazy. Who is your favorite fictional attorney? Do you have one?
Well, that's easy. It's Harvey Specter on Suits.
Oh, okay. He comes up a lot. The probably the two most common ones we get are him and Venny from My Cousin Venny. So people
Yeah.
are like, oh, that's actually the one that got me into law. And then Perry Mason's probably like right after that. So that's fascinating.
I,
I've never seen Suits, so I'm gonna have to put that in my TV queue one of these days.
yeah, watch Suits, man. Watch. You'll like Mike. You'll like Harvey. You'll like Lewis Litt. Anyway, all those guys are just fun to watch. I watched a lot of Matlock growing up.
Okay. My
This
my grandmother watched a lot of Matlock, and she watched me. So I grew up, vaguely aware of Matlock, but not really knowing what I was watching. That and
yeah,
Dallas, I can still hear the theme song to Dallas in my
yeah.
head. That I know at that time.
But Dallas was a popular show back in the day.
So, I had a secondary thought. Oh, shoot, I just lost it. It'll come back to me in a minute. Um, well, let me ask you this. Now, obviously, we live in a very weird time. Things are changing. Technology is on the rise. I mean, things are always changing. That's the one thing that doesn't change is change, right? But we are living in a very unique time. There's now autonomous driving vehicles. I think Elon Musk has a plan to let you like rent your Tesla out so it becomes like a self-driving Uber while you're sleeping so you can make money. And I think the concept is solid, right? But it raises questions like, well, if it gets in an accident, whose fault is it? What are a couple of the really big changes that you've seen technologically that are really shifting how you guys do what you do?
Well, I mean, obviously AI. I think artificial intelligence is really making an impact right now. And we're viewing it more as a tool, I guess you could say, rather than any type of replacement for jobs. Or I know a lot of people are worried about that. It's going to, and paralegal, quite frankly, when you read all of the lists put out by different, news publications or people who claim, they're the godfather of AI or, whatever, they all say paralegal is going to be replaced. And, you know, I don't think it's there yet. I don't think it is there. I don't necessarily want it to be there, quite frankly. I'm an advocate of the human touch, especially in personal injury. I mean, it would be
Keep the
ironic to
person
have,
in personal injury.
yeah, it'd be kind of ironic to have a computer or artificial intelligence helping somebody with their personal injury claim. I couldn't imagine, and I could be dead wrong about this. I mean, at least right now, maybe in 10 years, maybe less. I don't know. People will become more accustomed to something like that. But I have people approaching me right now with AI voice. They're like, you don't have to have an intake or for all of your consultations. Basically, a robot can handle everything. They can qualify a case. They can tell the person what they have. They can sign them up. They can do this, that, and the other. And I've gone through some of the tutorials to try to understand what products are out there just to see, but the more I've actually looked under the hood, the more I've realized and had introspection as well. Like, okay, well, if I was involved in an accident and I lost my brother, would I want to talk to a robot or would I want to talk to a real person? And I think I'd want to talk to a real person. I mean, when I call an airline now and I'm getting the AI stuff, I'm dialing zero right away. I lose my patience.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be that firm, right? Where, and I think it'd be a mistake for us to be that firm when we built it on this personal touch, type culture. Now, having said that, is AI going to be a part of our firm at any point? I'd imagine, yeah. We use ChatGPT, we use all of those different tools to help us. But ChatGPT and all of these different tools right now get a lot of things wrong.
Yeah,
And
a lot of hallucinations.
yeah, a lot of hallucinations. I mean, you've probably seen these things in the news where attorneys who weren't paying attention or didn't fact check things submitted briefs to judges, and these cases just never existed.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they're losing cases because and they look kind of dumb in front of the judge and now the world because they failed to do their research. So you know, AI, in my opinion, it's definitely getting bigger. It's casting a wider net. It's improving every day, but you still have to have a trained professional to understand what it's getting wrong and what it's getting right.
Yeah.
So we'll continue to implement different tools, and maybe certain job descriptions that we have now will change, or maybe those job descriptions could be repurposed based on the AI, but I always want to keep the human touch in the firm to make sure that people are getting that element because we are a personal injury firm.
Yeah, I find AI fascinating, and I use it in a lot of what I do as well. But I think the important thing is it's a tool, and it's never going to replace a human. Like it just can't. Like it can do certain things. I don't want to say you can never replace a human in the sense that technology advances and certain things get deprecated. We don't need, for instance, the bellboy who just as they're operating the elevator lift, right? Yeah, that's a job that kind of went the way of the dodo. And yeah,
Right.
we can all push a button and ride the elevator ourselves. There's certain areas where maybe it's not necessary, but I do think that that human aspect will never be replaced. And some of this is a philosophical position of my own. I do think that there is something unique about the human being that AI will simply never be able to do, even if you can perfect Turing test it, right? To the point that the average person couldn't tell the difference. And, their conversation is, was that a human or not? I don't know. We might get to that point in another 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I don't know. But I firmly believe that there's still something categorically different about a human being that will never be replaceable. Now, AI is growing by leaps and bounds, and it is following Moore's law, where you double processing power every year or whatnot, like half the time. So it goes up exponentially. So maybe in 2 or 3 years, it'll just be unfathomable. Something I've brought up in the past repeatedly was just a couple years ago, like three or 4 years ago, AI was starting to do videos, and somebody famously did a video of Will Smith eating spaghetti, and it's just the most bizarre and monstrous thing you've ever seen. Like it sort of understands what Will Smith is, it sort of understands what spaghetti is, but it's just like this crazy, bizarre imagery that like a fever dream. But then, like a year and a half later, 2 years later, you do the same thing, and now it's like it's almost photo perfect Will Smith like on the
Yeah.
Riviera or whatever eating spaghetti, and if you didn't know what you were looking for, you almost would be like, though, that's just a picture of Will Smith eating spaghetti. So like we've in just a couple of years, it has come a long way. So I'm fascinated to see where it goes. It is changing a lot of things. I'm a marketer by trade, as a lot of my listeners know, as you know, actually, we've worked together a little bit. And the one thing I found is it's changing the search engines, right? It really is huge because
Yeah.
now every day is, and I catch myself doing this, especially with things, for instance, I like to smoke meat. And the other day I was smoking a brisket and I needed to know exactly what to do. And I'm like, well, I could go Google this and try and find 15 different blogs that someone wrote about it. Or I could just ask AI and let it do the research and kind of regurgitate an answer. And then I
Exactly.
can still read it and judge it. And I'm like, that was the much more efficient way to do this. So it is fascinating. What do you feel about things like cars with cameras all over them and Ring doorbells and things like that? Does that make doing your job easier, I would assume?
I mean, definitely on the investigation side, because we're able to, catch, in video, exactly what's happened in an accident, for example, and things like that. Like Tesla, I mean, you know this, but they have a really good crash camera. We have a couple cases right now where you can see exactly what happened in the accident. In some cases, I mean, truthfully, it may not have been helpful. It maybe wasn't great because it showed that the client was more at fault than we wanted them to be.
Mm.
So if you didn't have a camera, we can make certain arguments that would have been more helpful, quite frankly. And that's just the lawyer in me, right? Wanting to win the
Yeah.
case and represent and advocate for that client. I should want the truth just to be told, right? But and I do want the truth to be told, but if you didn't have the camera, we probably would have been able to win the case in certain ways because just the evidence wasn't there, and we could prove certain things without that evidence.
Yeah.
Would have been detrimental. Hopefully, I'm explaining my way,
No,
myself.
I think that makes perfect sense. You can simply be truthful, and in being truthful, you can say, you know what? If we didn't know, we wouldn't have known. But because
Yeah.
we knew, and so we couldn't pursue this line of argument or reasoning or whatever it happens to be. I think that's fair. I think that if you couldn't make those sorts of statements, maybe you would be AI, right? That's
Yeah,
the
exactly.
authentic human thing to say, man, I wish I could have made this argument, but I know I couldn't have in good conscience because we had the evidence against it or whatnot. But I do think it's fascinating. And again, I mean, you mentioned earlier the Uber. I find rideshare cases fascinating because you have so many people out there that are doing now a commercial job without any sort of real formal training beyond, hey, I got my license 15 years ago, and you know, and all of a sudden now they're doing this commercially, to make a
Yeah.
living. And then on top of that, you've got the AI potentially coming down the road, driving the car and everything else. In a situation like that, if I hail a Tesla and it's self-driven and it gets in an accident, who do I sue? Can I sue anybody? Is it just a random fluke occurrence? Like it's such
Yeah.
a weird thing. Do I sue the company, the AI, the programmer? Do I, if it's clearly the other person's fault and they swerve and the car could have done anything, that's one thing. But like, it's just fascinating and it's always changing. Do you recommend your clients in general, or would you recommend the average person have a dash cam?
Um, I probably would in a lot of ways, quite frankly, because it does help you in these accidents, especially if you're a safe driver. Now, if you're not a safe driver, I don't know. But it's not going to be helpful,
Proving
right?
proving you're not AI once again.
But if you have a track history of no accidents and you're always obeying the law and you're a good driver and those types of things, I'd say, yeah, why not? I mean, it's just going to help you because insurance companies, again, they do everything they can to pay the least amount of money possible. And quite frankly, people in general, um, I wouldn't say they're dishonest in general. But a lot of people are dishonest, and we're seeing a lot more people like run away from accident scenes.
Yeah.
Not to bring myself into it, but just last week I was driving home. I was driving through Las Vegas to Phoenix on the I-15, and a tire came off a semi truck, rolled right in front of me. I couldn't avoid it. I hit the tire, and I'm disabled on the side of the highway. It's absolutely. My wife is in the car with me. We're absolutely very nervous because semi trucks are going by us 80 miles per hour. We think we're going to get just hit really hard by some other vehicle. And anyway, another car hits some debris, spins out, and then pretty soon 4 or 5 other cars come and hit that car. We luckily didn't get hit, but we witnessed this whole accident happen. We'll come to find out the person who caused the initial accident was a drunk driver. You're in Las Vegas. He runs away from the scene. The police talk to us. We don't know who this person is. We don't know where he went. We didn't really see any of that. So you're getting a lot of dishonest people, right? So these dash cam cameras can help. And the police actually asked us, do you have a dash cam video of these types of things? And we didn't. I don't actually have one. I mean, maybe I'm giving wrong advice because I actually haven't taken the time to do it myself. But it would be helpful in those types of circumstances because you can capture certain things. And when people lie and are dishonest, because people don't like feeling responsible or in trouble sometimes. They don't like taking accountability sometimes. And I think we're starting to see that more and more in society. And so these types of things can help.
Yeah. I think it's part of the human condition, unfortunately. Nobody wants to feel guilty. Nobody wants to feel like it was them that did it wrong, and especially when they realize it was them, like, it was somebody else. It wasn't me, but it is what it is. I do remember I was driving with my wife one time, and I was watching. We were driving behind a semi, and I was looking at the side of the road, and there was like debris from a tire that had blown out. And I'm wondering at this point if that was, because there was something in the road that was causing this to happen. But I was looking at the semi in front of me and goes, I wonder what it looks like when the tire blows, and immediately boom, the tire blew. And I was really regretting I didn't say, I wonder what it looks like when $1 million falls into my lap, because maybe that was my one chance. But it was
Yeah,
fascinating to see, and I mean that's a common occurrence on the
yeah,
interstate. Tires go
I
flying,
know.
which is crazy.
Yeah, and that's another thing, I mean, not to go on a tangent, but if I give recommendation to anybody, especially in Arizona when it gets hot, if you're going on a road trip, go get your tires checked out because these tires come off and you're going to get in accidents. So,
And make sure you got tread. I've seen pictures of tires
Mhm.
that are literally bald enough that you can see a reflection in them. I'm like,
Yeah,
that's not so good. So
exactly.
please, ladies and gentlemen, please take care of your vehicles out there, 100%. Well,
Yeah.
Nate, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today. I don't want to take up your whole afternoon. I've already eaten up over an hour of your time. So here in a minute, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump back over and show your website, and then I'll ask you my closing questions. But I am talking to Nate Preston, who is chief cook and bottle washer these days over at Your Accident Lawyer, which is Warnock MacKinlay Law, out in Arizona. They are a full service injury law firm. They've been featured all over the news. They've got lots of great reviews, lots of great awards. They've helped recover over $500 million for their clients. And if you're injured and you're in the Arizona area, they would be a wonderful resource for you. You can visit them at youraccidentlawyer.com or give them a phone call. They probably have a couple tracking numbers, but the one on the website is 623-343-4340. Again, that's 623-343-4340. So Nate, I'm going to ask you my three questions here. I'll give them to you in advance, and then we'll kind of walk through them, and that way you can kind of percolate on them for a minute here. Question number one is, if I gave you a magic wand and you could change one thing about your firm, what would you change and why? Question number two is, if you can go back in time, meet young Nate, maybe fresh out of law school 15 years ago, and give him some advice, what advice would you give yourself and why? And then number three is, if I gave you my magic pen, and with that pen you could change a law, that is, strike a law from the books, add a law, or edit law that's on the books, what would you change, add, or edit? So we'll take those in order. Question number one, I give you my magic wand. And with this magic wand, again, you can change something about your firm. What would you change about your firm if you could change anything?
If I could change one thing about my firm, it would be, man, that's hard. It's probably more self-serving, but it's a lot of things fall on my plate to manage on a day-to-day basis. And I constantly have these task lists, and then it seems like I come prepared to get 10 things done in a day and I might get two.
Yeah.
I think just having more time, man, like just being able to have more time to be able to achieve the goals and the tasks that I have assigned, um, because there's only so many hours in the day, and you try to live a balanced life as well, being with your family and those types of things. So I just wish I had more time.
So with the magic wand, there's now 36 hours in a day. Great.
That's right.
Question number two, you go back in time and you meet young Nate without breaking the space-time continuum or whatever, and you're able to whisper just a couple pieces of advice in your ear before you ethereally pass away or whatnot. Um, Not pass away, but in this brief encounter without breaking the space-time continuum, what advice would you give yourself other than the obvious, buy a lot of Bitcoin and hold it till it hits 100K?
I would just say enjoy the journey. I think it's, a lot of times we get caught up in the future of oh, things are going to be so much better when X happens, or things are going to be great when this happens, or whatever. My mom, she taught me something a long time ago, and I kind of live by this quote now, and I've just always really appreciated. But she said, the past is history, the future is a mystery, but the present is a gift, and that's why it's called a present.
Mhm.
And I find that to be very important in my life on a day-to-day basis, is to really just sit in the present. I think with technology, with everything moving so fast, our phones, we get caught up in all of these different things on a day-to-day basis that sometimes we don't sit with ourselves very well. And I would say my best advice to young Nate is make sure you enjoy the journey, live in the present, and yes, things are hard sometimes in terms of building a firm, or constantly juggling so many different things, but enjoy it, and then look back and be proud of everything that you've accomplished.
I think that's great advice. I mean, that's good advice for anybody, right? So you can't sneer at that. That's good stuff. Quick question number three. Now I have a magical pen here. It's a miraculous pen, actually. It's from Saint Benedict's Abbey in Atchison, Kansas, which is a Benedictine monastic community. But one of the priests must have blessed this pen or something because it's got miraculous ink. However, it's almost out of ink. So if I were to loan this pen to you and you could make one change with the remaining ink that's in this pen, what change in the law would you make?
That would have to be what's called the notice of claim statute in Arizona. And what that involves is when you file a lawsuit against a governmental or public entity in Arizona. So let's say that somebody's driving down the street and a police car causes an accident. The police car is actually at fault for a car accident. Well, you have to file a lawsuit against the police station or the city that is really governing that police. Okay. But before you can even file a lawsuit, you have to submit what's called a notice of claim. And a notice of claim is required within 180 days of the date of the accident.
Hmm.
And oftentimes it's not enough time to be able to fully investigate or to be able to get all of the information about treatment, medical bills, medical records. I mean, yeah, 6 months, 180 days seems like a long time, but in some of these cases, depending on the injuries and the seriousness of the case, it's not enough time. And these notice of claims require strict information that needs to be presented in them, including some certain amount for the demand. You know, you have to have certain facts, and sometimes the facts haven't filtered their way through yet. Um, Otherwise, you can get your case dismissed.
Hmm.
And I mean, I suppose it's the government making the law to give them the most benefit, right? Because the government is the one being sued, so they're trying to get as much what we call governmental immunity as possible in these cases. But a lot of jurisdictions outside of Arizona give you a lot more time. It's just the same amount of time as the statute of limitations. For example, in Utah, they give you several years to file a notice of claim. And again, in Arizona, we have 180 days. And to me, it's fundamentally unfair. The flip side of that is maybe a person was injured in an accident caused by a governmental entity. Maybe it wasn't as serious. Maybe they procrastinated hiring an attorney, and sometimes we get people who wait until after a 6 month period, after they thought they could resolve it on their own. They thought they could just deal with it. 6 months goes by, they didn't do anything. They contact us. Well, they don't get to do anything anymore. The case is over, and they don't get compensated. So to me, it's fundamentally unfair. I think I don't think it's fundamentally unfair that you have to submit a notice of claim. I think the government deserves, some sort of notice. I just think the time period is unfair.
I think that's a good way to put it. I will say this as somebody that perpetually takes an extension on my taxes.
Yeah.
Time between April 15th and October 15th, which I'm, looking at the deadline right now is less than a month away at this point. It goes by quickly.
It goes
Um,
by fast.
and that's a stupid thing like filing my taxes, right? So if that goes by and the fallout from an injury and everything else, you got life, you got everything else going on, like that's gonna be tough. So yeah, 6 months really does not feel like in any way a meaningful amount of time for something as serious as that. So I get it. So if you've been injured, especially with a government vehicle, please, guys, remember
Yeah.
the statutes limitations. They're there for a reason. They're there to make things fair, but some of them are sometimes the deck is stacked a little bit unfairly, and you got to be able to work around that, or at least bear that in mind as you're moving forward. Well, Nate, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today. I've enjoyed the conversation. I've learned a couple things, and that's always what I like to do. I do like to let my guests have the final word. However, are there any parting words of wisdom or last thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners with before we go?
Just do your research when you're looking for a personal injury attorney. And if you're in Arizona, look us up. I promise you, we're going to work really hard for you. We're going to do a really good job, and we're going to do our best to get you the maximum compensation you deserve it.
Awesome. 100%. That's great. Well, everybody, this has been, as always, The Attorney Post, and I am your host, Justin West. I've been chatting with Nate Preston, who is a managing partner over at Warnock MacKinlay Law. As always, you can reach them at the information down below. That'll be youraccidentlawyer.com. Also, the numbers that we've given out repeatedly. You can just Google them online as well, and you will find them there as well. As always, though we do deal with a host of legal issues in this podcast does not constitute legal advice. And should you have an issue that you are needing legal help with, you are strongly encouraged to find an attorney in your area who practices the aspect of law that you need help with. Now, obviously, if you're in Arizona, you've been injured, I think Nate and his firm would be a wonderful resource for you. And so I would greatly encourage you to click that link down below or go visit them online and get the information that you need. As far as the podcast goes, if you're listening to this on any of the podcast repositories, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, etc., we always appreciate if you would rank us or rate us or whatever it is they let you do on those sites. If you're on YouTube, leave a comment down below, like, subscribe, and share as always. But the most important thing you can do is this. If you know somebody who would benefit from the knowledge contained in this podcast episode, please share it with them. Please help them get the information they need to protect their rights. Because as I always say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Until next time, this is Justin West, your host. Thank you for listening, and have a good one.